Leo, you're on mute.
Okay. Now, I'm off mute now.
Yes, we can hear you.
Mr. Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, and welcome guests. Are you scared? Yeah, probably not. I'm going to start my speech with a story about being scared. It may include hyperbole. One Halloween night, many years ago, I was about 8 years old, I think. I was walking on a tree-lined street, 53rd Street, which is where I lived in Portland, Oregon. And the street always seemed spooky at night anyway, but this particular night, it seemed more spooky. The trees were silhouetted with a full moon in the background, and there's fog that wafted through the trees. And I was sure as I started walking towards those trees, bats could come down and bite me in the neck. I was scared. And then on top of that, and this has really happened, an owl hoots, woo, woo. And you wondered, where am I? I'm a little kid going out to trick or treat. Well, that was just part of the story. But I did put one foot warily in front of the other one as I began my trick-or-treating journey to the land of witches, goblins, and spider webs. I was cautious, I was careful, I was afraid. But the goal of getting candy kept my bravery strong enough so that I saw in the distance a porch with a light on. I thought, I'm going to head for that porch. But first, I had to pass the old judge's house. He never had his light on. The house was spooky every night, but it was even more so tonight. And I could picture that dungeon below this 3-story house that just looked ominous and dark and dreary in the night. I survived, though, passing the judge's house and went to that house with the porch light on. And I opened the door, knocked on the door, and somebody opened it, and I said, trick or treat. And I held up my bag, hoping I would get some treats. And I got some. I was so happy. My first time going trick or treating by myself. My younger brother, Dave, and I often trick or treated together at the same, not together, but at the same time. But he would go one direction, I would go the other direction. The idea was we're going to see who not only gets the most, but the best candy. So that was one thing that we like to do on every Halloween. And when we both got home, we would spread out our treasures on the living room floor in front of the fireplace with the fire going in it and count out our booty and keep what we wanted, and what we didn't want, we'd barter back and forth. Who's going to trade for what? Now, fast forward 18 Halloweens. My wife, Janet, and I were giving trick-or-treats this time instead of receiving them at our home on 69th Street in Portland. We enjoyed seeing the young kids come up to our house dressed as monsters. Those are probably 5th graders, or little princesses. Those are probably little kindergarten kids. Some were cute, some were scary. But it was fun to watch the kids come up and enjoy giving them treats. When our 3 boys, Brian, Dan, Tim, started trick-or-treating, they did the same thing I did when I was trick-or-treating. But in the days when I did trick-or-treating, I didn't have elaborate costumes. I may have had a simple mask, and I might have on a dark coat, but I didn't have the elaborate costumes that my 3 boys made up. For instance, one year, my oldest son, Brian, developed a rather clever costume. It was a robot body made of cardboard covered with aluminum foil and had flexible clothesline tubing for arms. And he had a mouth with a bag on the other side of it, and he would go up to the door, knock on the door, and when somebody opened the door, he would say, trick or treat, put candy in opening. Brian was so funny. He liked he really don't like the costume. So Brian thought, well, this is a good thing. So a few houses later, Brian went back to get more candy. Now his brother, Dan, who you know, he's in our club, also had moments of imagination. Dan designed and built a Pac-Man costume. He tried to make a big box look like a ball by cutting the corners off. And then he would cut a big hole for putting candy in, holes for the eyes, and he painted it bright yellow all over, and he wore that for his costume. It was not a perfect rendition of Pac-Man, but he got some interesting comments from people. He didn't win any prizes for best costume, and he said it was awkward walking around because it was so big, he kept bumping into it. And then one day, but the costume was a success. Now, Dan's words, now these are Dan's words. I was a budding Toastmaster practicing table topic skills when someone asked me, what was I supposed to be? So that was my young friend Dan. Now, my youngest son, Tim, didn't use cardboard, but he was able to come up with a costume as well, a more standard costume of Yoda wearing a brown robe and big fuzzy feet. He was a big fan of Star Wars. We enjoyed the 33 Halloweens we had in Portland. Fast forward now again to Washougal in Washington. Now, for trick-or-treaters to reach our front door, they had to walk up a steep hill. And we thought, oh, we didn't get very many trick-or-treaters that first year. But what happened was next year, we gave up bigger candy bars and thought this would be great. And yes, we got more trick-or-treaters. In fact, the word got out, we think, to the high schoolers, and they came up and got our big candy bars. So we ran out of candy early. Now, while Thanksgiving is a time when children pretend to be scary, it is also a time when they can learn to conquer fears. They are rewarded with treats for being able to go out, brave the elements, and overcome their fears. In the end, the joy of spreading out their treasures over the living room floor makes the challenge worth it. Adult life is like this Halloween story when you try to overcome your fears, and then we are rewarded. Life is good. Boo! Are you scared?